Jimmy Fallon absent his words for the aboriginal time in his career. Johnny Depp's articulation trembled as he apprehended those lines, and the absolute flat fell into a blackout so abstruse that alike the cameras seemed to stop breathing. What happened that night on the Tonight appearance wasn't aloof television. It was article that defied every script, every expectation, every aphorism of backward night entertainment. The admirers had appear for laughs. They'd appear for celebrity banter, for games, for the affectionate of effortless agreeableness that Jimmy Fallon had able over decades. But a back Johnny Depp accomplished into his anorak abridged and pulled out a bankrupt yellowed letter, aggregate changed. The amusement stopped. The music faded. And in that moment, 200 bodies in flat 6B and millions watching at home witnessed article they would never forget. This is the adventure of that night. The night Johnny Depp didn't appear to advance a movie. The night Jimmy Fallon didn't host a show. The night two men, a allotment of paper, and a flat abounding of strangers became allotment of article abundant bigger than entertainment. But Cypher saw it coming, not alike Jimmy. 3 hours afore the taping, flat 6 beddened with its accepted pre-show energy. The Roots were active through their corpuscle list. Date managers barked admonition into headsets, and admirers' associates confused into their seats with phones accessible to abduction every moment. It was Tuesday, a accepted taping night, and the alarm area listed Johnny Depp as the advance bedfellow announcement his latest film. Jimmy Fallon sat in his bathrobe room, flipping through agenda cards able by his writers. The segments were mapped out. A funny adventure about Depp's latest access mishap, a bold involving accents. Maybe a agreeable bit. Accepted fare. Annihilation unusual. Jimmy had interviewed Depp bisected a dozen times before. They had chemistry, history, alternate respect. This would be easy. But Johnny Depp was sitting in his own bathrobe allowance bottomward the hall, staring at article in his hands. An envelope. Old Creasts, the affectionate that had been opened and ref-folded 100 times. The autography on the advanced was shaky, accounting by addition whose easily know best obeyed their commands. Central was a letter, 3 pages. Every chat accounting with love, with pain, with the affectionate of accuracy that abandoned comes a back time is active out. Depp hadn't told anyone he was bringing it. Not his publicists, not the producers, not Jimmy. He'd agitated it with him for weeks, debating whether this was the adapted moment, the adapted place. But article told him tonight was the night. Article told him that if there was any time a belvedere to account what this letter represented, it was here. At 6:45 p.m., the flat doors opened. The admirers filed in, active with excitement. Tourists from Ohio, Academy acceptance from Jersey, a retired brace adulatory their anniversary. None of them knew they were about to attestant television history. Jimmy absolved assimilate the date at 7:02 p.m. to clap applause. He did his monologue, hit his marks, ashamed his jokes. The activity was electric. By 7:30, Johnny Depp's name was announced, and the army erupted. He absolved out in his signature style, layered, cool, calmly Depp, and took his bench abutting to Jimmy's desk. The Aboriginal 10 account were absolutely what anybody expected. Belief about filming in alien locations. Action about acquirements brand fighting. A antic jab at Jimmy's appearance choices. The Roots played a thing. The admirers laughed on cue. It was absolute backward night television. And a fresh Johnny Depp accomplished into his jacket. Subscribe and leave an animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. The about face was attenuate at first. Jimmy was mid-quest article about Depp's abutting activity aback he noticed Johnny's Duke move against his central pocket. It wasn't a prop move. It wasn't planned. Johnny's announcement changed. The antic beam faded. His eyes grew distant. Abundant was article Jimmy couldn't absolutely place. Actually, Jimmy, Johnny said softly, arresting the flow. There's article I charge to do. The flat grew quieter. Not bashful yet, but the activity dipped. Jimmy, accomplished by years of ad-lib and a live television, leaned forward. Of course, man. What's up? Johnny pulled out the envelope. It was worn, the edges bendable from actuality handled 2 abounding times. He captivated it anxiously like it ability atomize if he absorbed too hard. A few months ago, Johnny began, his articulation abiding but quiet. I accustomed this letter. It was beatific to my management, forwarded through about 10 bodies afore it got to me. By the time I apprehend it, the actuality who wrote it was gone. The admirers leaned in. So did Jimmy. The cameras, analysis article unscripted, anchored their shots. Her name was Eleanor, Johnny continued. She was 74 years old. Date 4 pancreatic cancer. She didn't accept abundant time, but she acclimated what she had to address this. He bankrupted the envelope gently. She wrote to me because allegedly I reminded her of her backward husband. Article about the way I played an appearance in one of my films. She said watching it helped her feel a budding to him afresh afterwards he passed. Jimmy's face softened. The jokes were gone now. This wasn't allotment of the appearance anymore. This was article else. She asked me, Johnny said, his articulation arose slightly, if I could apprehend this letter on television. Not for her. She knew she wouldn't see it. But for her daughter, for her grandkids, for anyone out there who's sitting with addition they're about to lose, or who's already absent addition and doesn't apperceive how to accumulate going. Behind the scenes, producers in the ascendancy allowance froze. This wasn't on the rundown, but Cypher confused to stop it. Jimmy's Duke aimlessly went to his chest. He glanced at the audience. Faces that had been animated moments ago were now still, attentive, some already bright with tears. Johnny, Jimmy said softly. Of course, apprehend it. Johnny Depp abundant the letter. The cardboard channeled in the silence. He took a breath, steadied himself, and began to read. Dear, whoever's listening, he started, and his articulation was no best the articulation of Johnny Depp, the cine star. It was article softer, article raw. My name is Eleanor, and if you're audition this, I'm gone. But that's okay. I'm not abashed of actuality gone. I'm abashed of actuality forgotten. The flat was absolutely bashful now. Not a cough, not a shuffle. Alike the roots who'd apparent aggregate in their years on the appearance sat motionless. Johnny continued. I spent 52 years with a man who fabricated me beam every distinct day. Alike on the canicule aback aggregate hurt. Alike on the canicule aback the apple acquainted too heavy. He had this way of attractive at me like I was the abandoned actuality in the room. Alike aback the allowance was full. And aback he got sick. Aback the doctors said there was annihilation larboard to try. He still looked at me that way. Jimmy's Duke covered his mouth. His eyes were red. He died 3 years ago. Johnny read, his own articulation breaking now. And I anticipation I'd die adapted alongside him. But I didn't. I woke up the abutting day and the day afterwards that, and the day afterwards that. And every distinct one of those days I asked myself, how do I accumulate activity aback the actuality who fabricated activity account active is gone? A woman in the advanced row above board wept. The man abutting to her handed her a tissue, his own face wet. And a fresh one night, Johnny continued. I watched a movie. It was silly, really aloof article to ample the silence. But there was this amateur Johnny Depp. And the way he played this character, the way he looked at the woman he admired in the film, it was absolutely how my bedmate acclimated to attending at me. And for 2 hours, I acquainted like he was still here. The letter had 3 pages. Johnny Depp apprehend every word. Eleanor's letter went on. She talked about her babe, who was aggravating so adamantine to be strong, but was crumbling inside. She talked about her grandchildren, who didn't accept why grandma was so annoyed all the time. She talked about the little things that kept her going. A cup of coffee in the morning. The complete of rain. A song on the radio that reminded her of dancing in the kitchen with her husband. I'm autograph this because I appetite bodies to know. Johnny apprehend his articulation thick. That affliction doesn't beggarly you've chock full living. It agency you've admired so acutely that alike the absence of that actuality shapes your absolute world. And that's not a weakness. That's affidavit that what you had was real. Jimmy Fallon, who had interviewed presidents and bedrock stars and never absent his composure, had tears alive bottomward his face. He didn't clean them. He didn't try to adumbrate them. He aloof sat there, one Duke on his desk, the added over his heart, listening. So, if you're watching this, Johnny read, and you're sitting abutting to addition whose time is active out or you're lying alive at night, because addition you admired isn't there anymore, I appetite you to apperceive you're not alone. You're accustomed to hurt. You're accustomed to abatement apart. But you're additionally accustomed to death watch up tomorrow and try afresh because that's what adulation asks of us. Not to forget, but to accumulate activity anyway. The final band was simple. Acknowledge you for alert, and acknowledge you, Johnny, for reminding me what it acquainted like to be seen. Eleanor. Johnny bankrupted the letter anxiously and placed it on Jimmy's desk. For a continued moment, Cypher moved. The flat was arctic in aggregate affliction and reverence. A fresh Jimmy Fallon did article he never done in 15 years of hosting The Tonight Show. He stood up, absolved about his desk, and hugged Johnny Depp. Not for the cameras. Not for the admirers aloof, because it was the abandoned affair that fabricated sense. The admirers rose to their feet. The acclaim wasn't loud at first. It was soft, about hesitant, like they weren't abiding if a claim was appropriate. But it grew. It swelled. It became article bigger than approval. It became gratitude. Share and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. Aback, Jimmy and Johnny assuredly pulled apart. Jimmy wiped his eyes and affronted to the camera. We're activity to booty a break, he said, his voice. We'll be adapted back. But during that bartering break, article amazing happened. The admirers didn't acknowledgement to their phones. They didn't babble or laugh. They sat quietly, abounding of them crying, some adhering strangers beside them. A woman in the third row affronted to the aged man abutting to her and said, "My mom aloof died aftermost month." He nodded and took her hand. Backstage, producers didn't apperceive what to do. This wasn't in the appearance Bible. This wasn't accepted procedure. But the controlling producer, a man who'd formed in television for 30 years, fabricated a call. "We accumulate it," he said. "All of it. We don't cut a second." Aback, the appearance came aback from break. Jimmy didn't acknowledgement to jokes. He didn't displace the energy. He looked into the camera and said, "If you're watching this at home and Eleanor's adventure affected you, I appetite you to apperceive something. You matter. Your affliction matters. And the bodies you've lost, they're not gone as continued as you accumulate accustom them with you." Johnny Depp sat quietly, hands folded, watching Jimmy speak. And for the aboriginal time in his career, Johnny acquainted like he'd done article that mattered added than any film, any award, any red carpet. The blow of the appearance was subdued. There were no games, no sketches. Jimmy interviewed one added guest, but the accent was different, softer, added human. Aback, the appearance concluded and the admirers filed out, abounding. Of them didn't leave adapted away. They lingered in the antechamber talking to anniversary other, administration belief of bodies they'd lost. One woman, an assistant from Brooklyn, approached a producer. "I charge you to know," she said, tears in her eyes. "My bedmate died 6 months ago. I've been so angry, so lost. But audition that letter tonight. It fabricated me feel like I'm not broken, like what I'm activity is normal." The ambassador hugged her. "It is normal," she said, "and your activity to be okay." The adventure aired 2 canicule later. Within hours, it became the best watched tonight appearance articulation in 5 years. Social media exploded. Hashtag Eleanor's letter trended worldwide. Bodies aggregate their own belief of loss, of love, of award the backbone to death watch up a back aggregate hurt. Eleanor's daughter, a woman called Claire, accomplished out to the show. She beatific a video bulletin that Jimmy played on the afterward episode. "My mom would accept been so proud," Claire said, crying. She consistently said the apple bear added kindness, added honesty. Acknowledge you for giving her that. Johnny Depp never did edition columnist bout after accustomed Eleanor's letter. It became an amulet for him, a admonition that acclaim and affluence beggarly annihilation if you're not application them to connect, to heal, to admonish bodies that they're not alone. And Jimmy Fallon. He kept an archetype of the letter in his bathrobe room. On adamantine canicule aback the jokes didn't acreage, or the appearance acquainted hollow, he'd apprehend it. It reminded him why he did this job. Not for ratings, not for awards, but for moments like that. Moments aback television chock-full actuality ball, and became article sacred. Years later, in an interview, Jimmy was asked what the best important moment of his career was. After hesitation, he said, "The night Johnny Depp apprehend Eleanor's letter. Because that was the night I abstruse that the best affair you can do as a host isn't to accomplish bodies laugh. It's to accomplish them feel beneath alone." Eleanor never got to see the pulse of her words. But her babe did, her grandchildren did, and millions of bodies about the apple did. Because one night on a date in New York City, a cine brilliant and an allocution appearance host bankrupt every aphorism of television and did article far added important. They reminded us that we're not alone. That affliction is adulation that has boilerplate to go. And that sometimes the best able affair you can do is artlessly listen. The letter still sits on Jimmy's desk, a admonition that the best moments in activity aren't scripted. They're felt.